Okay, I'm back. I just made a video and told you a little trade secret. Well, I guess it's not a secret. I'm not the only one that knows this, but I did tell you that the good thing, one of the good things about Sharpie markers is that they are definitely permanent markers. And once you outline something with Sharpie, you can put basically any color water-based marker next to that without fearing that it's going to smear, which that is not the case with other Crayola markers, which all of them that I've talked about so far. I'm finding out there are more markers than there are Carter's liver pills. That's what my grandmother used to say. Things that have happened since I taught markers. But anyway, let's say all the Crayola markers that I know of are washable markers. And you put a color on there that's dark and try to come back with yellow or a light color, it's going to smear. And the yellow will look like army boots. So, but that's not the case with Sharpie, which is one good thing. What I did here, and I don't want you to do this, do what I say do, not what I do. I used a stencil, a plastic stencil. I wouldn't buy paper stencils because unless you just want to use it one time and throw it away, which I see no need in that. But I used a stencil and I traced it right there because Sharpie has a fine point, and I can do that. Let me show you. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to show you that I can go right there. Okay, this is a bird. I can trace it right with that fine tip marker. This is ultra fine. We just talked about that. Ultra fine is the smallest tip that I know of. I keep prefacing this, that I know of. I'm sure that there are things that I don't know about that have come on the market since I've started all this. I've found out several of. Okay, I just traced that with Ultra Fine Sharpie, and I have a bit of a bird with a leaf on his back. Now, because that is Sharpie, I can take these Crayola markers next to that and color that any way I want to. Let me just, in fact, that might just be a good thing to do here. Let's see, I can't even remember what day. God created the birds. Mr. Bluebird on his shoulder. God created the birds. See, that is not going to smear. I can come right back in there and color with this Crayola super tip marker or any of the Crayola markers. It doesn't have to be a super tip, and it's not going to smear, which I guarantee you. Don't try this don't try doing a light next to a darker. And then, well, I'm quitting on that, but let me show you. Okay, that's a blue, I believe. This, of course, is the only one I hadn't labeled. This is grass green. See that? Although grass green is almost yellow, it did not smear when I colored it next to that Sharpie. So let's just do that. Okay, we have these are the fine tip Crayola markers. I'm getting so many markers I don't know what to do with. So let's just, okay. Let's talk about the story in creation where God told Adam, and I suppose Eve too, but it appears to me that he just told Adam and Eve came along later. Of all these trees in this garden, of all these plants that I've given you, you can eat anything that you want to except one tree, and that's the tree of knowledge between good and evil. So I think of good as being light colors, and I think of evil as being darker colors. So let's just do that. let's create, this is kiwi in a fine tip Crayola marker and not smearing. Let's put kiwi on this side. Those are good leaves. And let's put teal on this side. This is a dark leaf, bunch of dark leaves, dark green. So the knowledge of good and evil. And I talk about this a lot on my blog. Much of literature is based on the difference in darkness and light. And the Bible, if you want to look at it just as literature, is also based on darkness and light, the difference between darkness and light. So notice how these leaves are dark. This is teal with the fine tip Crayola marker and kiwi. Light leaves and dark leaves. Light leaves and dark leaves. Well, one thing that is not in the, I don't ask me how Crayola makes these decisions. But on this side, I'm going to put light brown, and this is not a fine tip Sharpie, so I have to be very gentle. But it's very light, and notice how that is not fading next to that. So this side of the tree is light. This is light brown, one of my favorite colors in the set of super tips. And this side over here is going to be darker, so it's just going to be brown. The difference, the tree of knowledge of the difference between good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. I have theories about that, but I'm not going to burden you with my theory because my theory is just my theory. And right now, it's not a good day for theorizing. But I'm doing this design. Actually, what I did, the design only had one side, and so I did the thing one side, and then I flipped it and did it the other way. So I have a mirror image. I kind of raised it a little bit and added a few things here and there. So this side is light and dark, good and evil. Now I'm just coloring. But what I could do, we don't really know what the fruit was on that tree. We assume that it was an apple. Because apples, actually I'll post this, apples were very well thought of, highly regarded in the biblical times. In fact, there were apple festivals. The pagans had apple festivals. And because it was a wondrous tree. It was a tree that had made food. And at that time, you know, I was very hungry, and I just was able to drive down to my little restaurant and buy me an omelet. Well, they couldn't do that in Bible times, so they had to rely on what they could grow. See how I'm making good and evil? I never know really how this is coming out. Okay, light and dark, lighter and darker. Now then, what I could do, this stencil can just be the starting point. I can look at where I have holes and I could put polka dots, or I can draw apples in there, assuming that the fruit of this tree was an apple. And I have myself a design outlined in Sharpie, colored with Crayola Super Tips markers to reinforce the story of the creation of the garden that Adam and Eve were placed in. This is one of the plants. This is the beginning of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.